Hi, so today I have a question for you. Have you ever looked at a design and wished that you could cut it bigger than your standard 12 by 12 or 12 by 24 mat? Well, if you have, then in today's video I'm going to show you how you can split up a design and make it work so that you can cut it bigger but still use the regular 12 by 12 or the larger 12 by 24 mat. I'm going to show you with two designs. One is going to be in portrait mode and one is going to be in landscape mode. And I'm just, for this video, I'm just going to use two of my own cutting designs. The first one is going to be a flourish design, which I actually showed you how to make in a previous Inkscape video, and the other is just going to be a file that I digitized for my own personal use. So we're going to be using Inkscape, and then obviously we're going to be using Canvas to convert our files. So I'm in Inkscape, I've got a blank page opened, and I've tried to make the screen as big as possible so that you can see what's going on. But when I edit the video, I will try and zoom in at key points. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over here to File and Open and find my original cutting file. I didn't need that one, just close that one, sorry. I should have imported then, not opened. Okay, so here's my original flourish file that as I say, I showed you how to make in a previous video. And then if you come up to the top and look up here, you'll see the size is 7.7 inches wide and 5.7 inches high. And this little box here, I'm on inches. If you're not, change it to whatever increment you prefer to work in, but I'm going to use inches for the video. I'm going to drag it up into the left hand corner, and I'm going to hold my control key down on my keyboard, and I'm just going to drag it out to make it bigger. And by holding the control key down, it's keeping it in proportion, so I'm not distorting it. So now you can see it's 13.4 inches wide and just over 10 inches high. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you that you need to look down here. You need to select your design and look down here and make sure that it is a path, because sometimes it might come in as, it might just say groups or a group of so many objects. It has to be a path. If it comes in as a group, what you may have to do is go to Object and Ungroup and then go to Path and click Union, and that generally then turns your design into a path. So that's the first thing I'm going to tell you. Just going to try and move over slightly. So we're going to have to do a little bit of maths here. So as I say, you can see that this design is 13.4 inches wide. I'm going to break this design down into 4. If you wanted to make this even bigger, you may have to break this down into 6 sections or even more. But for this exercise, I'm going to just divide it in half both ways, so make it into 4 sections. So I'm going to half 13.4. So that gives me 6.7 as a width, and it's just over 10, so I'm going to make it 5.1 high, or not this design, but the next thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to come over here to the shapes and choose the square, and I'm going to just drag out a rectangle and select it. While it's selected, I'm going to come up here to the width and height, and I'm going to resize it to those two measurements that I just said. So half of this and half of this way, yeah? So half of its width and half of its height. So its width needs to be 6.7. So up here I'm going to highlight and type 6.7, and then I'm just going to hit the tab on my keyboard to jump over to the height and make the height 5.1, and then hit enter. So that's now given me a rectangle that, if I put 4 together, would equate to this whole measurement. So just to recap, this flourish is 13.4 wide, and I've made my box half of that, which is 6.7. It's just over 10 inches high, it's 10.02, so I've made my rectangle 5.1. Okay, so that's there. Now, most important thing is this has to be a path as well. While it's selected, you can see down here it says it's just a rectangle. So you have to go to path and then object to path, and that makes it a path. So that's the path, and now that's the path. While this rectangle is selected, I'm going to right click and hit duplicate. Puts a duplicate directly on the top. You can see it there. I'm going to do duplicate again and make another one. You can see there, and I'm going to make another one. So I've got 4 rectangles. I'm going to come over to my flourish, and while it's selected, I'm going to right click and hit duplicate, and that's put a duplicate directly on the top, but it's made it black because the one underneath was black. So while that's still just selected as it is, I'm going to left click and hit red. So now I've got a black one on the bottom and a red one on the top. I'm just going to hit undo so it stays on top. I'm going to right click again, hit duplicate. This time I'm going to use yellow. So now I've got a black one, a red one and a yellow one. I'm going to right click again, hit duplicate and choose green. And then I'm going to right click again, hit duplicate and choose blue. So I should have 5 there now. So what we need to do now is, the top one is always selected, but just to make sure, just left click on your page anywhere to deselect, and then come back and select the top. Use these rectangles to divide this shape up into 4 segments or sections. So with the top one only selected, I'm going to select a rectangle and bring it over to the design. Now this rectangle has to be on top. This is most important. So with the rectangle selected, click this icon here that says raise selection to the top. And then while that's selected, hold your shift key down and left click on this top design, in my case this kind of turquoisey colour. Then I'm going to come up here to the align and distribute icon and select that. And then again over here you have to have selection in this box. If you have something like page or something else, just make sure you choose selection. Okay, so all as I have selected at the moment now is this top turquoise flourish, and I'll just double check to make sure, the turquoise flourish and this top rectangle. So we've got selection up here. We're going to, I tend to work, the way I've been trying these out is I work top left, top right, bottom right. You can do it however you want, but this is how I prefer to do it. So we want to align this rectangle in the top left section of this design. So I'm going to come over here and choose align left, and then I'm going to come here and align top edges. Now those two are still selected and the rectangle's on top. You go path, intersection, and that takes away just that top section for you. I'm going to try and I'm trying to make the screen as big as possible for you to see, but obviously still have a working area. So the next thing we want to do now, select the next rectangle, bring it down here, make sure it's on top, come up here and bring it to the top. While it's selected, hold your shift key down and choose your next layer down, in my case the green one. This time we're going to align it left again, but this time bottom. then we're going to go path, intersection. So if I put that one there and that one there, that's two parts of the design. Going to bring the next rectangle over, raise it to the top. While it's selected, hold the shift key down and select my yellow design. This time want to align it to the right, so I'm choosing right and top. While they're both selected, path, intersection. And the reason it's moved the yellow on is because it's moved the yellow one up to align its bounding box with the top edge of the blue rectangle. So intersection, there's the yellow design, which would go up there. Next box, bring it over, raise it to the top. While it's selected, hold your shift key down, select in my case, the red, and again we want to align it to the right, and this time to the bottom. Path, intersection, and there's the other. And the reason I kept the black one is I'm going to try and just zoom out to get a bit more of a view on my page. And if I bring the black one down and bring these in to each other, you can see, if I try and put them side by side, I've got a duplicate of this, which was my original design. It's not lining up exactly because if I zoom in here, you'll see I've got gaps. But basically I've been able to split this design, this black design, into four. So I don't need the black one anymore now, so I'm going to delete it. I'm going to try and zoom back out just so that you can see more of my page. And I'm going to drag the whole of the four sections now into the middle of the page. And then try and make it a bit bigger for you to see. So with all those four selected, you can now see that this is over 13 inches wide and just under 10 and a half high. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in on just the middle section here where they kind of meet up, and I'm going to choose the yellow section, and with the arrows on my keyboard I'm just going to move it over and move it up so it comes into line. And then I'm going to choose the red one and bring this one over and up until the design lines up. And then the same with the green one. The green one needs to line up here. So I'm going to bring this up only because I want to make it even bigger, just to show you how this works. And I want to make sure that I can get everything lined up. So that's close enough for the video. You can spend more time. So I'm going to select everything. While it's all selected, I'm going to hold the Control key down on the keyboard and I'm going to drag it out even bigger. And I'm going to have to make my screen smaller so you can see what I'm doing. So this square here represents my 12 by 12 mat. I'm holding my shift key down, I've got all four sections selected and I'm dragging out to make it bigger. Now if I click on the blue section, you can see it's 10 inches wide by 4 inches high. This is 10 by 6. This one's 10 by 8.5. This one's 11 by just under 8.5. The whole design is 21.9 by just under 17. So there's no way that you would be able to even cut that on a 12 by 24 mat, because you've got the length in the 24 but you've only got 12 and this is 16 from top to bottom. So by being able to split it up into four, you can now save each of these four sections as a cutting file, cut them and then line them up. So I'm going to show you how to save them now. You can't save this design like this. Even if you saved it as an SVG like this, which you can do, if you try to open this design in Canvas on a 12 by 24 mat, it would shrink the design to make it fit on that 12 by 24 mat. So the way to do it is to save each one of the 4 sections. And this is how I do it. You could choose to copy and paste each one of these into a separate document and then save them as SVGs and open them. But the way I choose to do it is this way. So the first one I want to select is the top left of my design. So I'm going to select the yellow and hit delete, select the red and hit delete, select the green and hit delete. And I've just got this one design. I'm going to go File, Save As. Just for ease, I'm going to call it top left. So TL.svg. I'm not going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it that for now to save some time. I'm going to put it on my desktop and save. And then that file should appear on my desktop in a few minutes. Then I'm still in Inkscape. I'm going to come back to the undo button and undo so that I get the 4 designs. Then this one I've just saved, I can delete. And then the next one I'm going to do is bottom left. So again, I'm going to hit delete and just keep the bottom left on my page. And I'm going to go File, Save As. Now, because we've just used this and we've not closed this document down, it's automatically got my top left there. So I'm going to change the T to a B and make that bottom left and save. And that's appeared on my desktop. I'm going to come back here, undo, and get all the 4 sections again. And then, so I've saved these 2 as individual files, so I can get rid of that, I'm going to save the top right section now. So I'm going to get rid of the red section. Just make sure it's on my 12 by 12 page, and I'm going to go File, Save As. Again, it's already put the last name in there, but we want top right. So top right, SVG, save, undo. And this time I don't need to bring everything back because I know that this is the bottom right section and that's the only bit I need. So I'm going to click the yellow and get rid of it. Bring this onto my page, File, Save As, and make this bottom right SVG and save. Then I'm just going to minimize this down and I'm going to open Canvas and log in and bring each one of those 4 files into Canvas and save them as a cutting file. I'm going to choose New Project, come to SVG, go to my desktop where I've got my files, and the first one I want is top left because that was the first one I saved and I just like to work in a methodical order. I'm going to choose that, say OK, and I'm just going to go back in actual fact to Inkscape and hit undo and get the 4 sections again and just double check this size. So this is 10.3 by 4.8. All these fit onto a 12 by 12 mat. So we're fine there. So I'll just minimize that down. This is the same size if you look at it here. So again on here I'm just going to call it top left and save. And that's saved it into my projects now. I'm going to select it and delete it. Come back to the SVG icon. Go back to my desktop and I'm going to choose bottom left. OK. Bring it onto my page. Now, because again we've not closed Canvas, it's still telling us the last name that we used here. So this time we want BL for bottom left. Save. It's going to ask me, do I want to overwrite the previous project, which I don't, which was the turquoise, the top left. I want to save this as a new project because I want 4 ScanNCut cutting files. So I'm going to say save. It's told me it's saved. Going to delete that one off my mat. Go back to the SVGs, back to the desktop. This time I want top right, which is there. choose OK. Just make sure it's on the mat. Come over here, change this to top right. Save. Again, it's asking us, do we want to overwrite the previous one? We don't. We want to save it as a new project. Say OK. Delete it. Come back to SVG and hopefully choose the last section, which should be bottom right, if I've got them in the right order. Bring this down, give it a name here, bottom right, save. Again, we want to save it as a new project and say OK. Now I'm going to go back to my projects and look in my project library, and there are the 4 sections. You can see I've previously saved this, but so I've got top left, bottom left, top right, bottom right, and you'd cut those 4 and you'd have the 4 sections to make that design in the bigger size than the 12 by 12 mat. So now I'm going to just minimize that down and I'm going to go back to Inkscape. I'm going to get rid of all this and I'm going to show you using another file. So File, Import, go back to my desktop, find the file I want and choose OK. And there it is. And again, I'm going to hold the Control key down and drag it out. I'm going to try and make this one quite big. This one now is 15.2 inches wide and just over 23 inches high. So I'm going to do the same thing. So we have to work out the measurement to make our rectangle. So I need my measurement to be, it's 14.6, so half of that is 7.3, so that's going to be the width, and the height is 23.17, so just under 23.2, so half of 23. Okay, so I'm going to draw my rectangle, select it, come over here, I'm going to make it 7.3 and hit the tab key on my keyboard to jump me over to the height box, and in the height box I'm going to type 11.6 and hit return, and that's given me my rectangle. So the first thing we need to do is check whether our design is a path. Now you can see it says group of 1 object. So what you have to do is go to Object, Ungroup, and it makes it a path, and then for good measure I would just do Path Union. You don't have to, I don't think, but try. I'd do it that way, get used to doing it that way, then you know you've definitely got a path. Come to your rectangle, you can see down here the rectangle is a rectangle, not a path. So we have to go to Path, Object to Path, and that makes it a path, as you can see down here. Again, we need to have 4 of these. So while it's selected, there's my screen jumping around again, right click, duplicate, there's number 2, right click, duplicate, there's number 3, and right click, duplicate, there's number 4. Okay, and here's our original pattern. So again, we want 4 more copies. You don't need 4, but if you make 4, you can always check that your design is right. So while this is selected, right click, duplicate. While it's selected, left click on red. That makes the duplicate red. Right click, duplicate, choose yellow. Right click, duplicate, choose green, and right click, duplicate, and we'll make that one blue. Now the top one in Inkscape is always selected. So at the moment it would be this turquoise, but we want to bring a rectangle over. So I'm going to select this rectangle, drag it over here, because again I'm going to start top left and work top left, bottom left, top right, bottom right. But the rectangle has to be on top. So I'm going to come over here to this icon here, and it says raise selection to the top, and that's what we want. Now that's selected. While it's selected, hold your shift key and select this turquoise. I've still got my align and distribute box open from before, but if it wasn't open, you come over here to the align tool, Select that, make sure you've got selection chosen, and we want top left. So we're going to go left and top. Now that blue rectangle is aligned to the top left of this turquoise head. While they're like that, path, intersection, and there's the top bit. I'm going to bring my next rectangle over, raise it to the top. While it's selected, hold my shift key and choose the green. Sorry, I'm going to bring it down here. I want to do bottom left. While it's selected, hold the shift key down, choose the green layer. Left and bottom this time. Path, intersection, and there's the bottom bit. Bring the next one over, raise it to the top. While it's selected, hold the shift key down, select the yellow, and this time we want top right. So I'm going to choose right and top. Path, intersection, there's the yellow. Bring the blue one over, raise it to the top, and again while it's selected, hold the shift key down, choose the right one, and this time we want bottom right. So right and bottom, path, intersection, and there is the other design, the fourth section. And if I just try and bring this over a little bit, you can see that it's a representation of this. So I'm going to delete this black one now because I don't need it. Again, I'm just going to use the arrows on my keyboard and just try and align them a bit better so they line up a bit more centrally to each other. Again, I can zoom in on this middle section and hit the select icon and bring these over because I want to just see the overall size. Okay, that looks okay. Now I'm going to zoom to fit matte and zoom down so I can get it all in. Select everything, bring it over here to the middle of the page, and you can see that the total design size is 14.6 inches wide and 23.2 inches high. So that wouldn't even fit on a 12 by 24 mat if we tried to cut it in one piece. But by breaking it down into 4 sections, it will. So again, I'm going to start with the top left. So I'm going to delete everything, bring this down and go File, Save As, and repeat the whole process. Save the top left, open it in Canvas as I've just shown you, and then I'll come back when I've got it into Canvas to save some time. Okay, so one last thing I just want to say is that this also works with text. So this quote here again has been split into 4. If you look, you can see I've got 4 sections. Now, the total size of this design is 19.29 inches wide and 17.45 inches high. And the reason that I say to save each section is if I save this whole design now, I'll just make a note of the size. So 19.2 and 7.4. And if I say File, Save As, and just give it a name, I'll put words.svg and put it on my desktop. And then minimize that down. Even if I open Canvas with a 12 by 24 mat, watch what happens when I go and choose the SVG. So I'm going to go and look for the file called Words and say Choose and say OK. and it says to me that the shape was larger than the mat that I was trying to use, and therefore it's reduced the file in size to make it fit. So if I select this now, and to get the size you have to group in Canvas. So if I go to group, you can see the size down here now. So it was 19.2 inches in Inkscape, and it's only 11.6, and it was by 17.4 and it's only by 10.3. So it's reduced the size. So that's why when you're in Inkscape here, you need to save each one of these sections as a separate file. Now each one of these, as it happens, will fit on a 12 by 12 mat. So if you save them and open a 12 by 12 mat, then you're fine. But if these sections were bigger than a 12 by 12 mat, when you go to Canvas and start a new project, you have to make sure that when you come here, you have to come to area size and make sure you choose 12 by 24. And that way, when you bring your Inkscape section in, if it's bigger than 12 by 12, it will open at its true size on a 12 by 24 mat. I hope that makes sense, because if you don't open the correct size mat, it will reduce this file to fit on the mat that you've opened here. So that's why you need to save it in separate files, and also double check the size of each of your sections here in Inkscape so that you know what size mat to open in Canvas to then be able to import it and save it. So I'll just get rid of that, and I don't want to save it. I'll go back to my projects and I'll show you the head that I was doing in the previous part of the video. Okay, so here it is. Now what I've done with this one, just to show you, I've saved it all on one mat, but I brought each section in individually. I saved each section like I showed you in Inkscape and brought it all in, and you can see I've grouped it, but you can see it's in 4 sections because it's 4 different colours. You can see the size down here. It's 23.19 inches high and it's 14.60 inches wide. So as a complete design like that, it wouldn't cut even on a 12 by 24 mat. If I ungroup it, you can see. So I could then, you know, position those. If I was cutting it all in the same colour, I could position those to get the best use out of my mat, and maybe fiddle about with these and try and get it all on one mat. But that's how you cut any design, be it a shape or text, bigger than a 12 by 12 or 12 by 24 mat. So I hope it wasn't too confusing, but obviously the beauty of having a video is that you can go back, rewind and watch each section again. So please hit the thumbs up under the video for me as a like. It lets YouTube know that you like the channel and you like this type of video. Please hit subscribe if you don't already do so, and share it across any of the networks or with your friends so that more people can find out what to do on my channel. And I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.